Portugal just held a presidential election. And depending on who you ask, it was either a triumph for democracy or a warning sign that the political establishment is running scared. 11 candidates entered. 2 came out. 1. A veteran socialist who'd been out of politics for over a decade, dug up like a political fossil for the occasion. The other, the leader of a party that didn't even exist 7 years ago, a political outsider who had spent years slowly, steadily forcing his way into the conversation. For the first time in 40 years, Portugal was going to a presidential runoff. And then the establishment did what establishments do when they're scared. The center-right candidate eliminated. The liberals gone. The communists out. Every single one of them lined up behind the socialists. Left, center, right, a grand coalition of anyone but him. They won 66% to 33%. Let's back up. Because to understand this election, you need to understand the man at the center of it. André Ventura, law professor turned politician, founder of Chega, which translates simply as enough. He launched the party in 2019 with virtually no money, no infrastructure, and no establishment support. He won 1 seat in parliament, 1 out of 230. The media called him a curiosity, a protest vote, a flash in the pan. Then in 2022, Chega won 12 seats. Then in 2024, 50 seats. Then in the parliamentary elections of May 2025, 60 seats, making Chega the second largest party in the entire country, pushing the socialists into third place for the first time in Portuguese democratic history. So when Ventura announced he was running for president, the political class wasn't laughing anymore, and they were right to be worried. Because the presidential race in Portugal works differently from a parliamentary one. It's not about party loyalty, it's a direct personal vote. One person, one choice. And Ventura is, whatever you think of his politics, an extraordinary campaigner. Magnetic, aggressive, relentless. He speaks a populist language of people who feel left behind. And in Portugal, there are a lot of them. Housing costs have exploded, particularly in Lisbon and Porto, driven in large part by mass tourism and foreign investment pricing locals out of their own cities. Immigration has become a flashpoint. Portugal has seen one of the fastest growing immigrant populations in Europe over the past 5 years, and corruption, slow burning, deeply embedded in the old party structures just brought down a government 12 months ago. When the Prime Minister's own family company was caught in a conflict of interest scandal, Ventura didn't create these grievances. He just refuses to pretend they don't exist. So in round 1, he came second. 23.5% of the vote in a field of 11. Enough to make the runoff. Enough to force everyone else to react. The center-right candidate, who should have been the natural opposition to the socialist, immediately endorsed Seguro. Politicians who had spent years positioning themselves as alternatives to both the left and the populists suddenly discovered they had more in common with the socialists than they thought. The message from the entire establishment was blunt. Ventura must not win. And in round 2, he didn't. Seguro took 66.7%. Ventura got 33.3%. So why did Ventura lose so heavily in round 2 if his movement is so strong? A few reasons. First, the presidential role in Portugal is largely ceremonial. It's not the same emotional stakes as a parliamentary vote where people feel their day-to-day lives are directly affected. Some voters who backed Chega in parliamentary elections essentially as a protest weren't ready to put Ventura in the highest office in the land. That's a different ask. Second, the anyone but him coalition was genuinely effective. Third, the president in Portugal has real but limited powers, veto legislation, dissolve parliament in extreme circumstances, represent the country abroad. The establishment was able to argue convincingly enough that this wasn't the role for an outsider. A man whose party is banned from coalition negotiations by both major parties. A man who, 7 years ago, had 1 parliamentary seat. Now, let's zoom out. Populism defeated. The center holds. Democracy works. They'll point to Portugal the same way they pointed to France when Macron beat Le Pen, or to the Netherlands when the coalition eventually locked Wilders out of power. See, the system self-corrects. The adults win in the end. But look at what it actually took. It took the entire Portuguese political establishment, left, center, and right, abandoning their own candidates, swallowing their differences, and uniting to stop one man from winning. And this is the pattern repeating across Europe. The mainstream doesn't seem to beat these movements on ideas, on policy, or on genuine popular appeal anymore. They beat them by circling the wagons, by making every election a binary choice, us or chaos. And it works until it doesn't. until the movements grow large enough that even a unified establishment can't hold the line. Look at the trajectory. Chega, 1 seat in 2019, 60 in 2025, and now their leader forcing a presidential runoff, winning a third of the vote against a fully mobilized opposition. What does the trend line tell you? For the EU specifically, a Ventura presidency would have been a headache. Portugal is a founding NATO member, a recipient of significant EU structural funds, and generally a reliable, compliant member state. A president openly hostile to the Brussels consensus on immigration, on sovereignty, on centralization would have complicated things considerably. That headache has been avoided, for now. But the Prime Minister governs with a minority. The Socialists are in disarray after being pushed to third in Parliament. Chega is the main opposition, growing in confidence and already positioning for the next election. The conditions that built this movement, housing, immigration, corruption, the sense that the old parties are the same beast with two heads, none of those have gone away. Portugal was supposed to be immune to all of this. A stable Western European democracy with a healthy democratic tradition. The kind of country where the far right couldn't get traction. They said the same thing about Italy, about France, about the Netherlands. So here's the honest summary. The left didn't win Portugal because they were popular. They won because everyone else was more afraid of the alternative. And in European politics right now, that distinction matters enormously. Because a coalition built on fear doesn't last. It doesn't solve the problems that are driving people toward these movements in the first place. It seems to just delay the reckoning. Let us know what you think, and see you in the next one.